Whether you're playing in 867 or 1066 in Crusader Kings 3, converting your kingdom from tribal to feudal can be a huge hurdle to overcome within the game. The requirements seem relatively modest, being a part of a reformed religion, having all the tribal innovations, a certain level of fame, so on and so forth. But as some of you have come to realize, that is not necessarily the case. In this video today, I'm going to help you in your transition from tribal to feudal. The way I'm going to break this down is by going over some steps before you even get your campaign going to help plan for that eventual transition to the feudal system, a pre-feudal stage as it were. Then we'll discuss how to manage your kingdom after you've made the full conversion to the feudal system. You can find chapters in the timeline below if you want to just jump to a specific portion of this guide. And as always, if you decide to pick the game up after watching this, please feel free to use my link in the description. You'll simply receive a Steam key that you'll go ahead and place directly into Steam while helping to support the channel at the same time. But let's get started on how to convert your kingdom from tribal to feudal in Crusader Kings 3. So to start out, we're going to take a look at Prussia. I've chosen Prussia here in the starting year of 1066 because it was easier for the example of this video. You don't need to start as Prussia. You can be whatever you want as long as you're trying to transition from tribal to feudal. So let's open up real quick our decisions tab and let's look at adopt feudal ways. And we can see that there are a number of requirements. You have to have your tribal law at absolute tribal authority. You have to be a part of, or you have to have organized your faith. You have to have level 2 fame. You have to have development level 5 in your capital, and you have to have all tribal era innovations. So I feel like a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory, but it's worth going over real quick. Let's jump over to the Realms tab. You have to, this is your tribal authority. You have to get to absolute tribal authority. So jumping up this quickly is going to be pretty crucial for you because if I press this button, pass the law, we can't go to the third one now for 10 more years. So getting a jump on these tribal authorities as quickly as possible is going to be crucial so that you can get them done with and move on to the next step of what you need to do for your transition into the feudal system. Now, another one is about reformation, right? When it comes to your religion. So you've got some options here. I can open up the religion tab and I can press reform this religion. And I've got some options to do here. We're going to jump into this more when we get to this actual stage, but this is how you would reform your religion, but we'll go over this in more detail later. You don't need to reform your religion though. You can just join a reformed religion. So if I click Poland, they're already a part of Catholicism. I can click this and it is an organized Christian faith. I can convert to this faith. It costs me 250 and I can do it right out the gate. And all of my vassals are going to convert with me. Now, doing it at the start can be a little difficult because your old faith will consider you evil and it will be harder to convert the lands you are going to go on conquest. So I would say if you're going to convert to an organized faith, take a look at how the old faith regards it and make sure it's not going to make your conquest or your expansion in the early game that much more of a hurdle. You don't want to create more hurdles than the transition to the feudal system is already going to be. So just kind of mindful of this. And this is historically pretty accurate, right? A lot of the tribal lords of the time would convert to Catholicism as a means of consolidating power and actually getting aid and assistance from the church. So it's a pretty cool little nod to history here. But you don't need to do Catholicism. I could click all the way over here. You could do Orthodox. You could do any reformed or organized faith on the map as long as you have the adequate. I quick convert here, as long as you have the adequate amount of piety. So that's one thing to note. And I don't think that it's gone over enough that you don't have to reform your religion, but it's also really fun and really cool because what's more badass than this feudal reformed Nordic army rampaging through the map. Now, in addition to, let's bring that decision back up. Level of fame, pretty self-explanatory. Just get the prestige and knock it out. Development in your capital. Just start increasing that gradually over time, and we're going to go over that in a little bit. And then get your tribal innovations. So now that we've gone over those just base requirements, one thing I want to talk about here is how to kind of plan out your campaign from the start. If you're already working on a campaign, you just want to jump ahead to probably a further chapter right now. But here we are with our lifestyles, and this is important when deciding how to really build your character from the start of your campaign. Now, in my opinion, you want to go solely with a martial style character, and you can do any of these other lifestyles, but my point is you want to focus on conquest in the beginning of your campaign, because when you actually transition to feudal, you're going to be spending a lot of time building up your internal strength and trying to kind of patch up some of the holes in your ship that transitioning to feudal does cause for you. So going martial is crucial, not to make it rhyme, and the reason for that is if you are not starting as a faction that is the cultural head of your culture, it's going to be very difficult for you to complete your innovations. Now remember, if you're starting in 876, you have a lot more time to do all these innovations. No one's going to be making that transition to feudal anytime soon, so you can spend a lot longer on it. If you're in 1066, the problem with staying as tribal in 1066 is you're dealing with larger armies, you're dealing with bigger forts with higher fort levels, so being a raiding force is not as advantageous, and the further you get into the timeline, the harder and harder it is to stay as tribal if you're not a massive force. So, in the early portions of your campaign, gobbling up as much territory as possible allows you to maintain culture head and influencing the further progression of your innovations. I've gone with Prussia here for this example because they already start as the head of the Prussian culture, and it was easier for me to kind of manipulate this for the example of this video. But again, you can be whatever you want. And even though you're focusing on conquests, you can still use your wife's ability to assist you to increase your learning to help boost all of your innovations. And really, I mean, stacking your cultural fascination with something that you're exposed to is going to greatly reduce the time it takes to push through a lot of these innovations. And you're going to need these innovations fast to get all the way into that feudal stage. So jumping back into lifestyles, if you're going down that first initial stage, any one of these can really work for you. Just go with whatever one works the best with what you have in mind. I like to go with the chivalry focus. It's just something I really enjoy. A lot of people like to do dread. You can do that if you so wish. Some people like to go down strategist, especially for this one, to just reduce the cost of going to war. Any one of these lifestyle focuses is going to be just fine. Now, going back here a stage. Oh, just to the parent branch. After you've conquested what I feel is a good adequate amount, maybe you're still on your first character, maybe your second character is still going through those martial stages and just conquering the land. Your next character, when you're starting to really focus on drilling down on those innovations and pushing you out of the tribal era, should be focusing on learning. And there's a lot of reasons why. For one, you want to go into the scholarship focus. It gives you a nice boost to learning at +3. You get a nice boost to your development growth, +15%, and it's just a really great tree. This whole right branch is so strong. So you get scientific for cultural fascination progress, +35%. Then you get planned cultivation, which helps out with the counselor task of increasing development in a county by 20%. Then you get scholarly circles, which is going to increase your learning by 2 per level of devotion. So if you have a high amount of piety, this is going to give you a lot of return and increase your learning substantially. And this last one is so crucial. 20% of counselors' primary skills added to your own. So this can really boost up your stats alongside your wife if you really focus on a wife that has a lot of learning. Her learning plus your learning plus this whole side of the branch is going to help you out a ton. In addition to, remember, you're transitioning to feudal. So you're going to reform your religion or you're going to convert. It's going to make stuff like this, open-minded, different culture opinion, ignore negative culture opinion, and different faith opinion and faith conversion cost very advantageous for you because you've now gobbled up land, you've got differing cultures, and you probably have differing religions, especially once you reform. Because as we'll talk about in a bit with reforming religion, that is going to change your faith to the new version of the faith, the reformed, and the old one. So you'll have to convert the old one into you. So I feel like this is such a strong tree for that character that's working on innovations to push you into feudal. Now, at the end of that, once you've kind of worked on getting all your innovations complete, you've got your land settled, and you're ready to make that jump. So at the end of that character's life or the beginning of the next character, wherever that kind of falls in your transition to feudal, you want to focus on stewardship. This one is so crucial because you can go down the architect line and get a lot of benefits for trying to really boost buildings and the construction time as well as the cost for them. So if we look at this, cutting cornerstones reduce construction cost and building times for your buildings and your holdings. Going into professional workforce reduces the construction time again by 30% as well for holdings. Centralization is going to help with development growth, which we've talked about is so important. And remember, if you're doing it in your capital, and your capital has the highest level of development, it's going to spread outward and help out all of the places around it, the domains around it. Popular figurehead's going to help with popular opinion, but architect's a real juicy one here because it's going to further reduce construction costs and time and increase your stewardship. So I think this one is very good because you'll also be receiving high stewardship, which will give you an increase to your domain limit and to your domain taxes. So these things are very strong and very, very good. So this is kind of setting things up. This is that pre-feudal stage. Now, I want to jump forward a little bit here into, okay, we've taken up a bunch of land and we're ready to start reforming our religion. So we're going to talk about reforming religion next. And then I want to talk about after we've reformed religion, but before we've hit feudal. And then finally, we'll talk about that post-feudal stage after we've hit. So let's transition now into that pre-reformation. Once you've conquered the land you want to conquer, I'd say that reforming your faith is going to be a huge portion of that transition to feudal. Now, you could have done this earlier, but in my opinion, if you do it later when you've created a lot of land that you know you want to gobble up, it makes it easier to convert because all of your vassals hopefully will convert alongside you and they'll convert their counties with them. And it's just a matter of converting any remaining domains that didn't fully go along with it because they weren't ruled over directly by a vassal. For example, if one vassal has 2 domains, his chief domain, his primary domain, is what's going to convert, not both of them. I think the other one has a chance to convert. I'm not 100% sure. But let's take a look at my Kingdom of Lithuania. I have used some console commands here to push me forward in this campaign. Clearly it's 1067. There's no way I could have done this in a year. But I used some console commands to create the exact scenario I wanted to talk about. So, like I said before, you can convert to any reformed or organized religion out there. You can jump into any Christian faith, any Muslim faith, anything that just is easier for you. It's cheaper to do so. If I click Convert Faith, it's only 250. But the benefit of reforming your own faith is if I bring up Decisions and I go to Consecrate Bloodline, if I reform my own faith, and I also have religious icon, then I get some pretty cool benefits. I get the trait Paragon, religious vassal opinion plus 20, and your actual dynasty gains 500 renown, and you get the title of, I believe it's Savior. And we'll show this off in a little bit because we're about to do this. But for this playthrough, and I assume a lot of people are going to want to go this route too, we're going to reform this faith. So if I click on the faith button in the lower left, you can see our current faith. And this is important because, again, it says unreformed Baltic faith. And you see prevents tribal rulers from changing government type. Non-pagan faiths with the syncretic folk traditions tenet are considered hostile instead of evil. Mutual opinion 30 bonus with faiths that have syncretic folk tradition tenet. And rulers have a conquest casus belli against neighboring rulers. So you can see how this affects us, right? But as of version 1.1, you can simply reform the faith down here at the bottom and choose all the existing stuff that you had before. So it's a little bit nicer. You don't have to choose a bunch of different doctrines. If you so wish, though, you'd say, let's go with bastardry here. We'll click this button and you can choose. There's no legitimization. There's no bastards. You can choose all these little situations here, like saying, okay, deviancy is accepted in my faith now. But it costs you more because you're deviating further away from the original doctrines of the faith. So you kind of have to do a little bit more reformation in that. And I believe this will actually affect the acceptance of some of your vassals because their sins and their virtues might fall under this now. So we'll just do this as is. We'll keep the faith as it is. You can click this button and it'll show you all of your vassals and their likelihood to convert. Even this guy is at the very bottom at 23. Pretty much everyone's going to convert. Reforming this religion will make it an organized faith. Organized faiths have access to holy wars, and their court chaplains are better at converting counties, which is nice. And this is important too. Your old faith will consider you a stray, so it'll reduce character opinion, popular opinion, and you can usurp their titles. As far as how this is kind of equated, they essentially look at you as hostile, but not full-on hostile. I'll show you guys in a second here. So let's press Reform Faith. And I've just pressed R to bring up all of our faiths. And you can see, oh, before I do that, you can see here's all the religions. Press Reform. And this is how it is immediately divided up. And all of your vassals will start to try and reform things on their own, so don't be too worried about stuff. But this is going to take up a lot of your time in your feudal transition, because you're now going to be spending time trying to convert everything that is from the old religion to the reformed religion. And this can be kind of sped up a little bit here by pressing E, selecting your vassals, and going to their vassals, right-clicking, and demanding conversion. This guy's going to accept it. Boom. Let's just have that happen, buddy. Go to this guy. Okay, he's got a dude here. He's still the, not even the previous religion, just a different religion altogether. And by demanding conversion, you can do this in any playthrough you're doing of a vassal. It will convert the entire county that he controls, which is a really, really, really powerful way to sway new regions that you've conquered into your, I guess, control and opinion. So just going across the board here, going to every single one of these, looking, okay, unreformed religion, a different one, demand the conversion. But this is just a great way to kind of clean it up. This guy converted, so it's great. This guy's got no vassals. Oh, we got this guy. Oh, he did not convert. And I'm looking at this icon right here. 50-50, I'll take it. Did everyone convert here? Yes, and yes. But even some of my own personal lands did not convert. So you can still jump over to your council, go to your chaplain, and convert the faith here. You've still got that ability. And like I said, your vassals are going to convert their own territory. They don't want it to be the other faith any more than you do. So you don't have to worry about that as much. In fact, I'm going to unpause. Oh ho. So this shows us here that we just reformed the faith. How awesome is that? And we'll do the other little dilemma that pops up here. Okay, so he just allowed it. I'll just pay him the money. He didn't want it. He didn't want it. He wanted it. Gotta calm down with that. And another one here. So you can see this will start to just change and grow. Great, my wife's pregnant. So reforming faiths is pretty crucial, because you obviously need to do this for a feudal requirement, right? Now we've all got everything checked, and we'll press this button and push forward a little bit here. But it does grant you this, consecrate the bloodline. And this is going to grant us Paragon, so we're going to perform the final rites. It requires a massive amount of piety, and so does reforming your faith, obviously, as you saw. So we'll perform the final rites, and we now get the sacred lineage. You gain the nickname The Anointed, gain the trait Paragon, the fervor increases by 25, and you get 500 renown for your dynasty. So it's pretty awesome. But let's take a look now at the former faith. If I click this faith, they just look at us as a stray, versus being hostile, which has a much larger impact. So you kind of fall in this weird situation where you're not in good graces with them, but they're not going to outright attack you and do holy wars and usurp you and stuff like that. But now you have the ability to do holy wars on other conflicting religions, which is very strong, especially when you make that transition all the way into feudal, where you lose the conquest casus belli, which is a really huge part of being tribal. It allows you to expand your borders very quickly. So now that we've reformed our religion, we have one task here. That is to adopt feudal ways. But before we do that, I want to talk about the individual territories that your vassals hold, and how to really kind of set you up in the best way possible transitioning to feudal. So we're going to start out by talking about these two duchies right here. And it's kind of important that when you're navigating around the relationship of your vassals, you ensure that they pretty much have all of the lands that are included in their title. So for example, this is the High Chiefdom of Lithuania. But if I actually snap this back to the way my nation actually is, we can see that that's not really the case. He just has these lands right here. And if I hover over his opinion, well, he desires a land that I've got. This one in specific. So what you should really try to do before you jump into your feudal stage is try to make sure that your vassals are as happy as possible. And doing stuff like this, granting this location to the gentleman who has it, is him, is going to be good. It just increased him from like 20 something to now 89 because he no longer desires that location. And if I look at him on the map, he's a little bit more in line with his duchy title. He still is missing this chunk of land, so I can click on a vassal, this guy in specific, who has another vassal, this guy right here. So this duke has this count, and this county is a part of the Duchy of Lithuania. So having all these county lines and duchy lines really line up with their chief title makes it easier, makes it so that your vassals are a lot happier. So I can right click on this guy who's already just whoopsies. Right click on this guy who already really likes me. Click on vassals and court, then press retract vassal. So I'm making one of his vassals become my direct vassal. So we're going to choose this dude because it's his only vassal too. And for the sake of this, it is an act of tyranny. You would probably want to use a hook to do so, but for the sake of this video, I'm just trying to show how quickly to do this. And he's going to accept it because it's at 100%. Retract the vassal, let that go through, and it will become mine. So he accepts it. He doesn't like it. Again, it is an act of tyranny. Now this guy, I think, should desire it. Yeah, now he does. Since I own it, he wants this because it's part of his de jure title of Duke. So we'll go here, and let's go ahead and... Oh, I want to click on him. Sorry, I click on the guy who wants it, right click on him, and go to Grant Vassal, and click this dude. And that's going to grant him this vassal. It'll be a part of his direct control. And I've now completed this duchy. Now there are some issues over here still, Courland in this situation. And you do have to do some you have some issues with stuff like this. These are instances where this guy doesn't have a vassal down here. It's his direct domain. So you need to revoke the title by going here, revoking the title, and clicking here. Now, this is going to incur tyranny on me. He's not going to like it. But if I have a hook, or he's a criminal, and I can imprison him, I can do this without incurring any tyranny. But again, for the sake of what I'm doing here, I'm going to revoke the title. It's going to incur some tyranny. You should say, yeah, okay, I accept. There we go. People are going to be upset. But now that I have this, clicking back on this chiefdom, hovering over him, he wants that chiefdom, he wants Mamel. So we're going to grant it to the dude who deserves it due to his ducal title. And there we go. So now, when I look at the map and I swap over to the duchy view, these guys now have the land that is in line with their ducal title. And this is going to make them overall happier. So when I jump to feudal, I'm not going to deal with as many issues. So one last thing before we actually adopt feudal ways and go into that is buildings. As of patch 1.1, buildings no longer are destroyed. They will simply convert over to a random feudal building. Keep that in mind. So these buildings down here right now, the Warrior Lodge, the Grand Halls, the Wall and Ditches, and Market Villages are going to become random feudal villages, or random feudal buildings. I've seen someone get all Hall of Heroes, so it really just depends on what luck of the draw you get. But it is just kind of mindful to take note of what buildings you've got in your domains. And I honestly, when it comes to tribal, I don't spend too much time on buildings. If you're an 867, I think you'll spend more time in buildings than you would in 1066. But I know that it's just going to become crazy once I hit that Adopt a Feudal Ways button. So I don't spend as much time here. But we'll talk about how you can replace these once you make that transition to the Feudal Ways. Well, let's go ahead and do that now. Let's transition into Feudal. All right, the big time has come. Let's do it. Let's press the decision button here at the top and adopt those feudal ways. So this is going to cost us 200 prestige and things are going to happen. Now, keep in mind, stuff's going to change, especially with your military. You'll probably have men-at-arms that are created. Let me just do this really quick. I've got plenty of renown. Remember, right now, they cost renown to have. So upkeep and the cost of creation of men-at-arms when you are tribal is nothing but prestige cost. That's going to change as soon as we hit tribal, or I'm sorry, feudal. But I want to put it there as kind of a control. And also take a look at this. We have 10,000 soldiers. And the important reason behind this is the contribution from your vassals, as I pressed the wrong button, there we go, is linked to your level of fame. So if my level of fame, well, it's a not rightful lead. We'll go to this guy. If my level of fame goes higher and higher, they give me more and more vassals. Same thing with taxes. You can see that they're giving me so much taxes because of my level of fame. We're at Exalted of Men. Among men, we're not at Living Legend. You can get up to 100% contribution at Living Legend. But this is going to drop because you're going to have to start managing your feudal contracts. So let's press the button. Let's do it. Remember, we're at 10,000 right now, and we're at a plus 10 for monthly income. So, adopt, boom. It's a new era. We have made it to the feudal age. Now we have dropped substantially. So we went from 10,000 down to 2,700 soldiers. We went from 10 to now 4 in our monthly income. If I jump over to our military is now costing us 3.2 gold a month versus what it was before at just the prestige cost. So one of the biggest differences between going from tribal to feudal is that you can have arguably higher quality men-at-arms because you can progress through better innovations and take more advantages of them. But you also have to realize, though, your vassals now are a bit stronger. If I jump over to vassals here, they're contributing far less troops to me, and they've got a little bit more of their own. So you now have to deal with managing your feudal contracts. So clicking here, even at the top end of a feudal contract, if I look at taxes, oh, let me look at a guy who doesn't have that. Here we go. Even at the top end here, it's going to be 25% taxes. And even at the top end for feudal, it's only going to be 50% levies. But you can just get a better momentum going because of the way feudal contracts work in limiting or granting good vassals or bad vassals more or less rights, respectively. In addition to here, if you don't get a kind of jump on these contracts quickly, you might deal with a situation where they start to lose opinion of you and you can't manipulate these as easily. And using and securing hooks before you transition into feudal can help you out with this. So if I want to say, okay, this guy, he's my friend. You know, we're firm companions. So I'm going to do this and this. Well, he's not going to like it. It's going to drop this. He's not going to like it at all. And you can't do one tyrannical change. You can only do one tyrannical change at a time, right? So getting that hook allows you to do a little bit more, but you can also grant things like, well, you know what? You're a good buddy of mine. You're a great council member. I'm going to guarantee you a seat on the council, and they'll counteract each other. So what I couldn't do before, I can now, right? These were two tyrannical options, but I've granted him a good right, and I can do this again to absolve the tyrannicalness of both of these things. I'm taking more taxes and more levies, but I'm granting war declarations, sanctioned war declarations, and I'm guaranteeing him a seat on the council. So those are important things to note when manipulating these feudal contracts. And as you push up in innovations, you get the special contracts like scutage, which increases taxes, levies, and men-at-arm maintenance situations, marches, which is going to help out as well. It's going to help out with your army gold maintenance, your controlled territory defender advantage, levy size, garrison size, and levy reinforcement rate. That's not me, by the way. That's him. So it's important to note that these are not always good for me. They're mainly good for the vassal, depending on which one it is. So using these to your advantage is going to help you out when you're making this total transition. Also, you have to know too, we went from absolute tribal authority to autonomous vassals, the bottom of crown authority. This is why that step we talked about is so important. Because if you don't have this, up to 3, I think it is. Yeah, it's 3. Vassals cannot wage war against other vassals unless they use a hook on their liege. If vassals demand land that is part of their duchy title and they don't have it because of whatever circumstance, they'll go to war with other vassals to create it, and they'll get stronger and stronger. And if they don't like you, that's a possible person that could be a real thorn in your side. So creating these proper duchy lines before the vassal transformation is going to help you out a ton here, because remember, like we said, passing these crown authorities takes about 10 years. Let's do this. From autonomous vassals to limited crown. Great. Now we gotta wait. What is it? That's actually 20 years to jump up to high crown authority. And you also need an innovation now with royal prerogative. So you're gated to getting to this point for a long time once you adopt feudal ways. So trying to make sure your vassals are very happy is going to be very, very strong for you. Now let's jump over here to military. Because now, like I said, you have less levies because you're getting less contribution. Also, your champions are going to be tweaked a little bit too, because that had an effect on things with prestige and whatnot. So you'll have to determine who's going to be the champions that fight for you. But when it comes to your men-at-arms, in my opinion, I feel like you have the ability to boost these guys further because they're only drawing from your constantly rejuvenating income pool versus your prestige, which required you to go to war to really boost up substantially, or call hunts and so on and so forth. So in my opinion, you can have more elite armies because you can increase your men-at-arms number, or maximum capacity of men-at-arms, easier with buildings and with lifestyle focuses and with the ability to just increase their size by virtue of income. So those are things you have to take a look at. Is this dragging you into negative right now? Well, then stop the monthly maintenance of them. Watch what happens when I do this. Jumps back up to 6.5. So make sure you're looking at military immediately after you make that transformation, because you might just be draining money right now in a situation you just don't really need up front. So now that we've done that, let's take a look real quick at some buildings. I don't know what I have anymore. There we go. We have 3 domains. So actually, we looked at this one before, so let's look back here. So we had some interesting buildings here. We had one of every single tribal building. And now we've got homesteads, which helps out with tax, supply, and levies, hamlets, bailey, and hound pens. I mean, to be totally honest, I think we kind of lucked out on this random. This is a pretty solid transformation here. We get a nice defensive building in our capital and some good money and levy making buildings. And now we can make duchy buildings because we are a tribal faction. So one thing though I want to talk about is maybe you don't want homesteads. We'll click on this and press this button, replace building. And we can then replace it with whatever building we want. Replacing this building will destroy the existing building. The cost of the building is not refunded. So that's important to note. Let's just choose barracks for S's and G's. And there we go. It's going to now switch over to a barracks and we're good to go. If you look at these icons, you can see the color. When it's that like gold yellowish icon, that's denoting that you have the ability to upgrade the building. If it's this blue one, that means it's at its max upgrade for what you've got right now. See, right now we can't do this because we need a keep building for its upgrade, and the Prussian culture has the manorialism innovation, so we can't go further. Also, we're already constructing, but still, if you see those colors, that's what they mean. So we have gone over our vassals, managing them through your feudal contracts. We've talked about managing your domains and how to replace those buildings, and we've talked about your military. And we've also gone over crown authority and how important that is. So now at this stage, you should really be focusing on your court, your council. There we go. Increasing development across your lands. So let's just say this place right here, because it's my capital, and ensuring that you're starting to build up development across everywhere. Because remember, when you are in the feudal system, development is now going to contribute to your levies, your taxes, and your supply limit. With the tribal, it was only contributing to your supply limit. So getting these things up and going is going to be important. You can now construct new holdings, so you can make cities, castles, and temples in any county that you see fit now that you want to help expand out. So focusing on that development is going to be very crucial for you. Also, you have your religions to worry about. This, like I said before, though, is going to kind of take care of itself. So as long as your chief domains have been converted through your priest, your vassals should start to take care of this on their own. If they appoint new vassals to these lands, you can go ahead and convert that vassal. But one thing you also can do, I think I've got some territory here we can experiment with. Let's say I really want this to be the new religion, and I want to do it quicker than actual conversion. Or maybe this is new territory that I've gobbled up and I want to make it part of our religion. We'll go ahead and press grant to at the bottom here. And let's just find someone with a good opinion of me. That's not a duke. It's just an unlanded person. So we'll press the toggle filters and we'll go to ruler, not a ruler. Okay, so this guy's got a pretty good opinion of me. He is the old religion, which is what this location is. And that's important. You want to kind of match up those faiths. Let's go ahead and just grant him this title for the sake of the video. He now has that. We're going to click on him. I'm going to right click on him and demand his conversion. I remember this was the old, I think it's called Vitalist. Unpause that. Watch this go through. Hopefully it goes through. He accepts and boom, there you go. So if you're trying to deal with all these lands and they're not being in the right religion, or you've conquered new territory, this is a great way to swap things over for you. And the last thing I want to talk about too is using your wife. That sounded bad. Using your wife to help you out with managing your domain. Remember, this is the stage that you should be with your development character, trying to boost development across the land. Or if you really want to focus more on innovations, have her use patronage to increase your learning to help out with that. Or even if you're in stage 1, use chivalry to have her help you out with the martial ability. Martial is going to be increasing your levy size and reinforcement rate. So really use all the tools that you can at your disposal. Now that you're in the feudal system, it might be easier to cement marriages with other feudal countries out there, or create better alliances with those feudal countries. So now that the world is kind of open to you through the feudal system, hopefully this helps you out in that conversion process. It is very tedious. It is it's a huge time sink. You're going to be spending so much time right now trying to boost up the interior of your country so that you get back to a sizable amount of levies. But even at 2,200, looking around, we're still competing. This guy is a massive military strength of 2,000. 2,000. I mean, that guy's a tribal dude. This one's feudal at 3,500. Poland's got 3,700. I mean, we still are doing quite well in the levies department. We're just going to boost it up by using those abilities such as buildings, such as our feudal contracts, so on and so forth. But hopefully this video helped you out, guys. I know this is one that a lot of people have been struggling with. And if there's anything that I missed out on that you still have a question, please, by all means, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. And if there's something that you wanted to talk about that is really important for the transition from tribal to feudal, please let it be known in the comments. The more information that is disseminated out to the community, the better. I want to make it as easy for people to make this transition as possible. This video is very dense. We cover a lot of stuff, and we cover it in a very small time frame in my campaign, but in yours it's going to be 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years depending upon what starting location you go with, or what starting bookmark you go with. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below, all that kind of fun action. But have a good one and take care.